I've used a few language models to replicate my paper with Fabian Mandel on control variables. And the point has been to just test how good these models are. And previously I tested Gemini 2.5 using Gemini CLI, and now Gemini 3 is out. And this is probably going to be a fairly short video because I've tried this twice before. And Gemini is, at the time of recording in November 2025, beating most other models on different benchmarks. So this model is really good at reproducing the paper. So what I'm going to do now is that this is the positron R editor. I have terminal here, and then I have Gemini CLI running. So this is Google's agentic AI coding tool. So I can just tell it what to do and then it does it for me. And I have a folder open here. I have a PDF. And the PDF here is my paper with Fabian Mandel on control variables. And this is a pretty simple paper. So it contains a few simple Monte Carlo simulations. And we are trying to replicate the paper just from the PDF, telling the AI to do it for us. So these models typically can do this with some human intervention, but I've tried this model before and it just kind of does it without me having to do anything. So what we are going to replicate is simulation number 1. And what makes this challenging is that this is we're testing if omitting control variables based on the correlation between the control and the dependent variable makes the regression coefficient biased. And what makes it challenging for a language model is that the key information is only available in this figure, and this is a bitmap figure, so you can't copy paste text from here. So the model needs to read this figure to understand what's going on in the paper. And then we try to replicate this figure here, and that is also a bitmap. So the model has to use multimodal capabilities to make sense of the figure. So we're just gonna let it run, and it'll read the PDF first, and I turned on the model, so it shows that which model we are using. So we're using Gemini 3, and Gemini CLI typically switches between different models. So it might use Gemini 3 for planning, and then it might use a cheaper model for the actual implementation. One thing that I like Claude Code a bit more is that there's less this waiting what happens. So Gemini is clearly doing something, but it doesn't tell us what it's doing. So when you use Claude Code or Klein, then you get more feedback from the model, so the model is explaining more what it does. So now it's just like doing something, and then it probably just spits out the simulation code. And now it's writing the file. And next it asks probably for permissions to run, and then we will see if it got it correctly. So that is what it wanted to write. And now it's running. So I gave it permissions already before to execute R scripts on my computer. While we're waiting for it to run, we can inspect the code. And so this is sample size 250 R². This is everything that we define in the paper. And then there is a figure reproduction. So let's take a look at, yeah. So it's pretty much identical to what we have in the paper. The only difference here is that there's a bit of randomness, because I instructed it to only do 1,000 replications instead of 10,000 to make it run a bit faster. And yeah, so I just gave it an initial prompt, no human intervention. It's able to reproduce a paper, a simulation from a published organization research methods paper. So this is pretty cool. And I would assume that it changes how many people do work on research methods and how people learn about methods, because you can just, if you have an idea, you can just ask Gemini to test the idea for you with Monte Carlo if you know a bit of basics about the simulations. And the R code, so this is well commented, and this is something that I wouldn't do in a function. I would just code it. I would probably also not make a function for this, so you can see that it kind of comes from a programming background instead of R background. And Yeah, that's correct. This dropping, this is something that some other models struggle with. So when you have just one control, then if you don't specify drop equals false, this becomes a vector instead of a matrix. So this is and that's also what people struggle with. So this is a very common error, not include this drop equals false when it's possible that you have just one row or one column in a matrix. And then it does correlation tests, so test the significance correlations keep based on significance levels as it should. I would, instead of doing this bias, I would just return all the replications, because you might want to analyze, for example, standard deviation or mean, but this is the bias is enough. Sorry, mean is the bias, but standard deviation. But this is sufficient for the replication. Yeah, and this ggplot looks pretty much what we had in the paper. We also had a theme minimal, so it identified that that is the appropriate theme in this case. All right, so this is gonna be my next co-author.